11:30 it is. All right, let's go ahead and get started. We'll probably have some more people drift in. We're still late, but it is Friday afternoon, and a number of our students are international. So in a lot of places, it's a lot later. Um, anyway, or earlier even, depending on where you are. All right, so here's the story. The reason I wanted to do a session at the close of the week, particularly, and it just so happened we set this up on purpose to do this the week of NFP. So not only is it the close of the week, but it's the close of the week on an FP day, which is often a volatile day, even if it wasn't this normal craziness. Wow, that was an interesting sweep up we just got there. That was from 13 to 17. I always keep an eye on the sweeps because that gives you a way to measure risk instantly. It also tells you which way, if there's overwhelming momentum, it'll be sweeping only one way. So anyway, back to the topic. So normally an NFP Friday is normally a volatile Friday close, and Friday closes in general are pretty volatile, and there's usually some good setups. I'll talk about what they are in a minute. And then on top of that, given all of our recent volatility, that probably will add to the whole thing. So the first thing that I just want to cover as, there's JVC. Welcome, JVC. The first thing I just want to cover for the, Friday at the end of any sort of day, any Friday at the end of the week, there's always certain things that go on. But if that particular day was a trend day, which today was not, today we established the range, the initial balance is high and low. We traded from one end of it to the other, and now we're kind of went back to the middle, which is where we're kind of hanging out. Okay, so that's a pretty typical day. Most days are range days like this. This was a fairly tight range once we got open. The Globex range is big. It's still 92 points, but you can see, once the initial balance established, the high is 27, almost 28. And, the low is like 90-ish. Yeah, that's a normal size range. So it settled down once we formed the initial balance, which, kind of by definition, it usually does, because that's the initial balance is kind of after all of the price discovery happens and we form a high and a low, it tends to respect that. We've seen a lot of cases where it hasn't, but that's the general consensus over time. All right, sip of coffee coming. Having said that, when there is a trend day, when we just went one way all day, and you could argue yesterday was one of those, on a 1 minute, it doesn't quite look so trendy, but, it established the low, it hung around there for a while, then it broke down and it closed pretty much at the lows. So, off the very low a little bit, but that's a reasonably good trend day. So if that was a Friday and we were down near the lows, and so this is the point I'm making, on any Friday that's been a trend day, down or up, either way, you typically see a kind of rebalancing going into the close because nobody wants to carry a position into the weekend. And it isn't always before the close of equities, which is, 1 o'clock my time. We have futures continue to trade after that for a while until they settle. And so that's why this session is going to go past the equity close at 1 o'clock, at least for a little while. We may not go all the way to 1:30, or 1:45. But anyway, so the point I'm making is if you have a big down day or a big up day, the big up day is not so much, but big down days, and this isn't really enough of a down day. We're down 47 points. If we were down 90, 100, a big chunk of points in the ES, usually you would see some sort of a short squeeze going into the close. And I've talked about this in a lot of the Friday live sessions that are in the TRG library. We've seen a couple of those. There was one day we had an 80-point rally in the close. It was one of the days we had like a 160-point range and had trended down most of the day pretty strongly. And, it's just really expected that everybody's been shorting into it all day, and going into the close, they have to cover those shorts to get flat. So that's the scenario that I was hoping we might get today. I don't think we have it. You never know until it starts trading closer to the close, but this doesn't look like the kind of day that's going to happen on. This looks like everybody who wanted to either buy or sell between, now and the close probably has already done it, or they're not worried that they're going to be able to exit wherever they want, because we're moving around in a nice predictable range, which, again, if you learn about ranges, you can make a consistent living, because most of the market most of the time the market is in range and it stays in ranges. You just have to learn to figure out what the current range is. And that's what we've been talking about all week. All right. And the current range right now, let's look at the LRC ranges. Top's 22, bottom's 12, a nice little 10-point range on a 40-point day that had a 90-point Globex overnight. That's a nice clean pattern. And it doesn't suggest that the close is going to be a whole lot different than what we're seeing right now. That's the first thing. So the odds that we're going to get any of the really rock and roll crazy setups going into the end of the day are pretty slim, but we could. And if we do, what are we likely to get? Okay, let's talk about that. I don't think we're going to get the short squeeze rally kind of thing, but if we do, it certainly could push us up to the top of the session in the high 30s. So that would be interesting if we started seeing that. I don't see any evidence that's going to happen, by the way. I mean, if anything, it looks a little bit more like we could drift down into the close, but I'm not getting short either. I'm not predicting anything here. This is just kind of random action that we could be scalping. There's no question about that, but kind of tired to scalp. And I just did a bunch of scalps in the last few hours. Or I did a few. I didn't do that many, but anyway, we're up nicely for the day. Let's see, what's my day at today? Looks like, yeah, we're up like almost, it's more than that. It's like 358, something like that. I posted it earlier. Anyway, so my point is, I'm not pushing it. I'm trying to cover this one evaluation that's trailing drawdown. So I don't want to, have a bunch of money and then have it fall back. I've had a really good win rate, just a couple of losers all week, nothing really big. That $100 one was the only really one that was even close to being on the limits of what I would expect in a 3-lot evaluation kind of risk management. So I'm really happy with the performance there and the results. So I'm not in a need to push it. And also it's been a little erratic. We've seen some pretty good sized sweeps either way. So given that, what other possible scenarios are there going into the close if we're not likely to get a big short squeeze or a big sell-off? Well, to do that, what I like to do is take a look at I switch these to 5 minutes, and you can see we're almost perfectly in the middle in ES, and NQ is down near the bottom of the range. That's worth watching. If it starts to leave the low there and head further down, that could indicate we're going to sell off into the close. RTY is at the exact same spot, and YM, like ES, is smack dab in the middle. So I look at that, and I look back at this. We talked about this morning. We still have that weak, poor low down there right at the bottom, but we came very close to cleaning that up. It did just clean it up. I take that back. It did. So, and that was that level I was talking about all morning around 82 that I kept saying all morning session, I'd really like to get long down there. And that was like right here. So that actually played out nicely. And I did get long down there and I made a few bucks in both the evaluation and in a different trade in one of my cash accounts. So again, happy with all that. But given this, put this back for a second, if that low goes again, and now it's pretty clean. So now the odds are really unlikely, again, on a Friday close, that we're going to get anywhere near there. This looks pretty symmetrical. It looks like, pretty balanced. We have a smooth profile, and we solved the one thing it didn't have, which was a nice symmetrical low. So I don't know. This could be a really boring close, which if it is, if it's getting really boring, we'll just wrap it up. I scheduled this session because I thought we would have a short squeeze going into Friday. And I'm a little disappointed that we don't. But what could happen? Well, what's really likely is if we can push the edges of the short-term range just a bit, like push up just a bit, push down just a bit, and then kind of come back here to the middle. If we see that over the next, let's say between now and the top of the hour, so call it noon, that when I see that kind of behavior and it looks that balanced and we're not getting sweeps, which is basically the situation right now, that's a really good time to scalp for ticks because, again, risk goes way down because it's getting quiet. So we might just do that. That could be, we could go back to the minis and scalp for, 2, 3, 4 ticks at a time. This is the type of conditions where that is reasonably predictable. It's clear where to lean. And so that might be a good exercise for you guys to see and learn about. So that's one thing that I think we might be able to do. But I don't think we're going to get the short squeeze, as I said. And I don't think we're going to get a big sell-off. The VWAP's right below us. That's the session VWAPs. 6.75. Liquidity is not telling any story. Liquidity is kind of just disappearing. This is interesting also going into the close. There's a good chunk right below us, but other than that, there's like nobody anywhere. It's, pretty much everybody's like done for the day. It feels like that. And on Fridays when we're going to get a short squeeze, or when, one edge of the range or the other is at risk, it feels different from this. It's not nearly this kind of slow and quiet. So I think we might be going into a relatively quiet close. So that's all the background material for the moment. And let's just see how it plays out. How are you doing, JVC? You getting some rest?
Yes, I caught up a fair amount this morning. It was very pleasant.
Yeah, I actually got
more than I realized.
Yeah. This kind of stuff can get exhausting, and you get caught up in the adrenaline, so you don't really feel tired. Yeah,
yep. I was shocked. Both of the super early morning sessions, 2 and 1 a.m., I was totally wide awake, no problem, felt good, stayed up all the way through the morning, through the rest of my trading, and then just fell apart.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I find, particularly if we're doing live sessions, it's easy to have the adrenaline just keep you going, and trading in general, that can get pretty intense. So
very much.
I crashed right after those 2 nights too, and then I slept most of the days after that, so that I could continue to be up in the mornings. And yesterday was really good. I slept most of the afternoon, so I was at like midnight, and I'm not tired. I'm tired from the session, but I've been up for 12 hours already. So this worked out good. Anyway, I'm watching this liquidity. We just came down and traded right into it at 10, and that's been in play all day. It's been coming and going, and then there's a nice little trade off of that. Was tempted to take that. That was a pretty predictable little long back up to, guess what? The quarter at 12.5. Funny how it does that over and over and over. But again, I'm purposely not being very aggressive right now. If we get over the top of the hour and it stays this quiet, maybe we'll do a little more trading, and I'll show some specific examples of that. But I want to make sure that read that we're going to have a quiet close continues to be true. I like this liquidity down here to lean on. It's also serving as a magnet. We're drifting down to it, and then a little bit's getting chewed up, and then we're trading back up. That's a potential setup for a puke. We could trade right through it. That could be happening right now, but I don't think so. I think it's just, ebb and flow right around the liquidity. I don't look at this as like, they're slamming the bid and the bottom's about to go. It doesn't feel like that. So again, I wouldn't necessarily play long again, but if it pushes through, that's an interesting spot. Okay, now it's getting interesting here. Ooh, that pushed down really good through there. So we're right on the VWAP now. So if we closed right here, everyone would say we're perfectly balanced. I think this could be an interesting long, but I don't want to just jump in front of it. Let's see, it's right on the 7.5 quarter there, isn't it? That's an interesting spot, but it all of a sudden got a little more volatile. Those were some pretty good aggression to the downside. So I'm not in a hurry to buy this or sell it. I want to see if that continues. God, if we could push back to the other end of the range again, going into the close, that gets really interesting. That's exactly what I said I didn't expect, but I would love to see. So let's see if that's what's happening. I'm going to put the 30-minute footprint up again over here on the left so we can just kind of see the structure. There's a price rejector at the bottom of the previous rotation. And then this one, that push down left some zero prints, or left one anyway on this interval, but it still has UB at the bottom, so it's kind of anything could happen. We're below min delta, so sellers are in control, but that aggression's probably going to fill back in up there at 09. I'm tempted to buy this long, but I'm curious to see if now we're just resting before we continue down, because that's the reason I wouldn't get long here. And it looks like that's a possibility. We're sitting right on the edge of the range, and there's a little bit of energy there, a little bit of supply right there, a little bit of demand right there. It's two-way. There's a little bit of an inflection point. If this one goes, we'll probably trade back down, certainly to 5 and lower. 5's the next quarter. There's 5 right there. 5.25. We just hit it. And then, of course, comes 2.5 and then 00 again. Those could be in play, but I'm just, again, not interested in getting in front of any of these. It's interesting. We went right through that liquidity. We left that zero print. but we keep going into these weak ebb and flows that are then going. That feels a little bit like the buying that was covering people covering their shorts is kind of subsiding, and now maybe we're going to retest the lows. That would be real interesting. Plenty of time to do that. So we have a solid hour and a half plus to for this to get going. So I'm just going to watch now. This is, ooh, look at that sweep up. That was interesting, right from the 5 area to the quarter at 7.5. And it's still got legs. So maybe this gets back to 10 where all that liquidity was. Well, that's an interesting spot to watch, which is right there. Sitting right on that spot. Yeah. One of the other things about the close, other than the setups that I've spoke about, if it's going to break ledges or if there's high momentum or if we have, the Friday closing short squeeze or, a flash crash going into the close, absent all of those things, I generally don't trade closes. I look for specific circumstances to trade. So just want to be really clear about that. I don't take my normal setups going into the close. The only thing I really want to see is, are we going to have really aggressive ledge breaks or are we going to have an aggressive short squeeze? In other words, I'm looking for things that are fairly significant momentum. And that's the problem here is this keeps acting like we could really get going. And then we go back into ebb and flow and we develop a new range for 3 or 4 points in either way. And that's dangerous. You could just really end up on the wrong side of this, even by accident, even if you were gaming it and reading it perfectly. It's just, it's not clear what's happening yet. So I'm going to go ahead and stay out of the way. The other thing that's worth mentioning today is that we are rolling next week. And given all the volatility and all the action in the equities, I wouldn't be shocked if this coming into the rollover week, the middle to the end of next week gets really crazy. And this could be a little preview of it. You know what? One way to evaluate that is to take a look at the internals. So let's do that while we're kind of watching this drift down. That's the other thing. This is kind of this just dripping down. So it's like there's no place I obviously want to lean short. We have seen a couple of sweeps up, which kind of also makes me not want to be short. There's been a few sweeps down too, which makes me not want to be long. So, and we're getting little bursts of high volume. That's what the little circles are. Those are traded volume. And so a little burst of high volume, which is what you would expect going into the close. That's normal. Let's see what's going on here. If there's anything in the internals that's helpful in this conversation. Well, we're still down at the lows, and that's a pretty bad advanced decline number, but it's not a catastrophic one. If it was like going down hard from here, that might indicate that we had a lot more selling to go, and that could still happen. 2,000 or more on down, that gets ugly. Cumulative tick is not as ugly as it could get, but again, it's threatening. It could break down here. Same with the volume. All right. So the picture here is this could be we could see a situation. Boy, it barely half filled the gap on most of the indexes. Yeah, it's not out of the question that we could retest the lows. Again, I don't want to be short trying to go that way because it's moving back and forth too much. But I'm certainly happy to be mindful that could happen. And as we start heading a little closer to that, maybe play some of the ledge break odds or play some of the short squeeze odds after we get down there. If we can get down into the 82, 85 area again, that might be very interesting because as we looked at a little while ago, that area, it did this kind of drift down thing into that. And then it litigated down there for a while and then it came back pretty aggressively. So if we can get down into there again and do it early enough before the close, that could set up another little baby rally. After all, the people that sold on the way down there have to go to cover. Again, that's the kind of thesis of Fridays where there's been a directional move going into the close. All right. So again, right here, I'm seeing this drifting down that I just don't want to trade. So I'm just going to watch it and we'll see. If anybody has any questions, while we're watching it drift down, let me just also refresh your memories. Tomorrow morning is the last session of the Scalpathon, and it's specifically for kind of recap and everything else. So if you have any questions or anything you want clarified or any of that stuff, tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock is when we are doing that. And I'm just going to kind of go as long as I need to. If there's questions, we'll continue until everyone's questions are answered. And I'm also going to kind of debrief, again, just recap what we did all week and then talk about, if I were you, depending on where you are on your journey, and what next steps I might suggest for you after the Scalpathon, and to help you continue your developing your scalping skills and your trading skills in general. So this is something I told you guys about this morning that's happening again. When we have a directional move down like this that starts to turn, it's always a good idea, if you look at my LRC views here, when the bottom LRC, the faster LRC, starts to flatten out at the bottom of a directional move, that's often an interesting spot to watch. And we're there right now. It came up here, it swept up here. And we're seeing sweeps again in both directions. So I'm not going to get long or short, but that was a very interesting little burst of energy there. Looks like we could get a move up, a strong move up going into the close. I still feel like that's on the table. This question is from where, certainly if we get below zero and can retest the 90s or the 80s, that would be an ideal place to try that. From here, it's a little bit harder to do. Look at this. We traded right back up to 10 where all that liquidity, we just ate through it. Now we're almost right back to it. So, maybe those were longer term players that were buying there. Who knows? But it's interesting that that's the range now and that it's trading that range pretty aggressively. So it's too big to play. The top of the range right now is 10 and the bottom is 1.5, 1.75 rather. So, that's 10-point range. That's a little bit too crazy. The LRC range is 98 to 7. So it's also 10. It's just shifted a little lower. Oh, yeah. This feels like we could get a really, really good long setup under the right circumstances. I'm just going to be patient and see if we get it. A push down anywhere into this volume right around 95 or lower, anywhere, from there down to the bottom of the range, 82 to 95, it got bought every time we went down there, and it took some time every time, which makes it easier to trade. You can kind of scale in or out. So again, if we got down there and we were far enough away from the close to kind of grab a little short squeeze rally, that would be a really great idea. Short from here, it would be fun too if we didn't have these darn up sweeps. That just keeps negating any short idea to me at all. They're just too radical. And there's been a few radical up sweeps too, so it's kind of a bad spot to play the mini again. Let's see what happens if it can retest the low and get through 00. Then this could get interesting for the short down to that area in the 80s and low 90s that I was talking about. Let's see how it handled the bottom down here. There's been a lot of demand down here, and it has traded off of it. But again, each time it's managed to chew through the demand on the way, and then we get a big push the other way as soon as it does that, which makes it just really hard to pick a spot to play. The market's actually remarkably stable given what's going on. We've had a lot more volatility, but it's been relatively predictable. As long as you're patient, it's not doing anything really surprising. I really like this. This was really pretty today. And, remember, it was just a few weeks ago that we were having these, double, triple, quadruple breaks of the initial balance. And, this is just really nice range. It's, a little bit crazy on the way to the edges of the range and in the middle now and then, but it's relatively predictable. So let's see if we can find some trades as it gets closer. The first thing I want to see, this is by far the most important thing. The last two segments, the last two 30-minute periods, the first one starts at the top of the hour, and then the second one obviously at 12:30. I'm always interested to see how the 12 o'clock segment starts, that rotation. That's almost always a good clue about what's going to happen going into the close. And the last one, these almost interact like A and B period. I know JVC's fooled around with that a little bit. So that's fun to watch too. Sometimes there's a, right before the close to the closing period trade. And
yep. So it's a valid setup as long as you understand how to read what's going on in the order flow. Otherwise, it can really catch you by surprise.
Right. Because you can get caught in one of those giant short squeezes or one of those breakdowns of the range. Exactly.
Totally.
And so, yeah, you have to be really mindful of the flow, but it can definitely set up a good trade. So let's see, we might just get that. We're 5 minutes out from the top. You know what? I'm going to go reheat my coffee here. And are you guys getting rain up there, JVC? We've had it threatened, but it hasn't really rained much here.
Yeah, we are. It's been really nice. It's not consistent, of course. We get no more than, if we get an hour's worth of mild, gentle rain, it's amazing. But we're getting something at least.
Oh, cool. We all need it. All right. I'm going to take a quick break, go nuke my coffee, and see where this. Again, I want to see this 12 o'clock rotation start. And you know what? Let's put up the 30-minute footprint, Deuce, so we can just see it there.
And well, it's going to happen as soon as you go reheat your coffee.
I know. It's going to go crazy. It always does. But at the moment, just the lay of the land's pretty clean. There's a price rejector at the bottom of that period. The most recent period is pretty clean at either end. There's a tiny bit of UB up there. We're right in the middle between min max delta. So, it's working a pretty good range here from like 16 down to 0.25 using the deltas. So that also makes some sense. And we did go back and get that zero print that we had on the, it's amazing. Lee's got a whole new scalping strategy that was showing me that is just based on zero prints on a fast chart, like a 30-second chart. It's actually pretty good. Anyway, all right, let me go do that. And of course, it'll get crazy while I'm doing it. So entertain folks, JVC. I'll be right back.
Sure. Look at all the pretty colors. It's tradition at this point that when Jeff goes to heat his coffee, whatever the move is that's going to happen will happen. So we can watch for it right about now. I think the CME has him bugged. Just sitting right on that high volume node. If you were a TA person here, you might be saying, oh, look, we've got a triangle forming. It's compressing and squeezing, and it's going to explode one way or the other. And they're not entirely wrong.
Okay, that was good exercise on the stairs. Here we go. There's our move. I caught it just in time, so perfect. Oh, and one other announcement. I am going to clean up and make you a nice little, bullet points for each of the setups that I talked about document. And I should get that. I won't have that done before we have our debrief tomorrow, but I will get it done over the weekend. So I'll post that in the Scalpathon. And it's nothing fancy. It's just a summary that is cleaner than the one that I was typing as we were talking, and I'll put a few more points on it too. All right, this is an interesting spot right here, potentially for a long. That push down was pretty aggressive. We've got a lot of liquidity here, but big fat whole number is certainly in play. You could be looking short from here down to that 95 area that I was talking about. Let's go ahead again. I'm being really patient. I want to see this next rotation. It could be the perfect long. Ooh, this could be setting up for the perfect long at the start of the last hour. I'm so tempted to start scaling into this. Let's watch it. All right. Oh, it left some more zero prints. That's another good sign. Okay. I am going to start scaling into this long. So I'm just buying them at the market. I've got 197. Let's take another one. So now we've got 2. We're 96.5. Again, I'm thinking I could take quite a few here. So I'm not worried at all if it's going to be a little offsides. Down to 95, even down to 85. I might be interested, depending on how quick it can push. The faster it pushes aggressive, the faster a snapback we can get. So I'm gonna if this holds here, we could get a wicked snapback, and it's low risk because I'm not risking a lot of ticks, and I can scale in as it holds here, and we can put a target on the first one up at 5. That's a couple $100 away in micros. So it's real asymmetric. I've been saying this over and over again, and if I'm totally wrong, I can either get out of the way or I can scale more. I only have 3 here, so maybe take the first one off right before 00. That's pretty low risk, right? All right, let's see if we get that snapback. It looks like it's about to start. We're in ebb and flow down here. There's the snapback. Okay, it didn't go quite as far as I'd like, so maybe we'll take the first one off a little faster. So we'll go for 1.5 on the first one. Let it trade the quarter at 97.5. Cool, we're out of that one. Let's protect it with a stop. We got 2 left from 95.75. It's trading 98. I've got stops under them, and they both filled. So cool. We got 8 more ticks on the last 2. So that was another $20 bill we just picked up with 3 micros. That's what I was waiting for. Although, I'd like it a little lower, and I'd like to see the snapback happen a little more aggressively, but it's still just right on the beginning of that segment, and we have a price rejector down there at the low, the 0 prints right above us. We've already repaired some of that, though. So if you're going to catch high volume reversals and they don't become a high volume reversal, they just pause and it gives you a few ticks. Don't be greedy, because odds are, it may have more down to go. And so, take your profits and wait for the next round. And if it really starts going up, you can always rejoin it, so that might be happening here. This might be worth a rejoin. Let's watch the flow. I'm going to give it 1 right there at the market just for fun, and not going to be too aggressive because I still think we're going to go down some more, and in which case I'm going to add to this. So let's see. Let's put an order at 95.25 so we can scale in a bit, maybe 1 right in the middle of those 2. So let's see if we can get another 1 or 2 here. I don't know that. Okay, now we got 2. So let's put a target up on that first one, and maybe we'll catch a runner on the other one. And we'll still try to buy a couple more further down here. So I've got 2. I'm going to take profits on the first one here in a second. It looks like, what happened? Sorry, hit the wrong mouse button. There we go. Okay, we filled on the first one. We'll put a protective stop under the other one. We'll cancel this, and let's see if we can catch a runner. And we did. Hello. We're long from 96.75. It's trading 2.75. So let's see if we can get 10 points out of this. I'm going to trade it a little bit looser than I would, trail it a little looser. I'm giving it 3-4 ticks, a little more room than I would, and I'm going to get hit anyway, I think, here. My stop's at 1.25. We're long from 96.75. It's trading at 3 now. I'm going to scoot my stop up to 2.5. So the 2.25. Hopefully we'll get above 5 here, but I don't think so. We got filled. All right. So that was almost 10 points there. Let's see. That was, let me do the math. It was almost 8. So I'll take it. Again, that's what I'm looking for going into the close. That's what these little short squeeze rallies are like. Oh, and there's another little spurt. So, I'm not going to chase it. It's proving the example. It's also leaving some 0 prints on the way up, which we could come back and get. But if this is truly a closing short squeeze rally, it's going to have some legs. It's going to go for a while. That if there's a lot of people that have to get out of the market, this is what it looks like. They just keep pushing it up, and the ass keeps getting lifted, and it will trade right to the other end of the range, or certainly to the mid-20s here if that's going to happen. I don't know that it has that much energy, but we certainly saw a good chunk of what I was looking for. So I'm happy with that. And we put another, that one was good for $35. So we have almost 2 more $20 bills. Call it a $20 bill and 3/4. So, and now the day total is up to $3.95. I will take it. All right, let's see. I think there's some questions. Jose was practicing scalps last night and earlier today, and each time I thought I was doing well, I got caught in a brutal sweep. That's what happens. That's why you practice. And also understand that these conditions are really hard. Most of the time, that particular problem happens, Jose, where you've got a whole bunch of winners in a row, and then you get a really brutal loss. That's usually when you get too comfortable with reading the action and you're not scrutinizing what's happening. You're thinking, I got this. I'm in the flow. That's when it'll do that to you. And so it's just a matter of practice. And what happens over time is that goes the other way. And the more you do a trade and it works, the more cautious you get because you start realizing that it's getting too easy. And so I say this a lot in live sessions. If I've done the same trade 2 or 3 times in a row, I will be very cautious trying it again, like along here, because my rhythm, my body is forming a rhythm that might not necessarily be there. So it's a really good spot to get burned. So practice, number one, and number two, look out for that behavior because that's really common. Okay. Is this considered a high volume reversal? Yes, that was an example of a high volume reversal. Those are always the most visible on 15 seconds. And there it is right there, clearly. Because what are the criteria? Perfect, Elena, by the way. Yes, high volume reversal means we have momentum going one way. We had it down and it just stops. That's the first criteria. High momentum that just stops. And the second it stops or very close to it, the delta rolls over to the other side from big negative or big positive, depending on which way it's going, to the other direction. So you immediately buy that and boom, that's a high volume reversal. Absolutely. And that is my favorite scalping setup that there is. And as I said, that's the one I was hoping I would get on a push down. And in fact, we did get it. So this session turned out to be great. I'm really excited that it did exactly what I wanted to show, because at first I thought it wasn't going to pan out. So that's cool. Cool. No worries. I'm glad we're repeating that, because that is by far the easiest trade to make money on scalping. You just have to be really patient waiting for actual high volume reversals, and you have to trade them very tight, with good risk management. My other favorite are ledge breaks. Those, because they're just so consistent. 99% of the time, the ledge break trade works. You just need the ledge, and there's only 2 of them at any given time, and we have to be near one of them. And so right now, that trade's totally off the table. But the idea of what we talked about at the beginning of this session and right before that trade, the idea that if we could get anywhere down here toward this low area that got bought, that it would be a great place to look for a long. Here, let me just do this. This will illustrate this really clearly. Rectangle. Okay, so I'm just going to draw. And if I draw the bottom of this up until, what was this kind of, after we came down and we established the first hour low, what was kind of the ebb and flow range after that? Okay, and so that's it right there. And the high is a little bit high there, but that's pretty close. So if you look at that, look at where we just traded down to. We traded down to the spot that we sprung off of right here, and we sprung right here, and it was the middle of that happening there. So again, that was just a really low risk place to try that. And for the further down it got, the better that was, which is why I scaled into that. And I said, I'm willing to buy 10 here all the way down to the 80s. And we were trading in the 90s. That's a lot of room. But again, that's the kind of setup that if you're wrong, it would have been really obvious. And the odds that we're going to have on a Friday in the second to the last period have the low just fall out, the really unusual. Maybe if there was something in the news or whatever, that could happen. But most people who wanted to sell have already done so. And so there just wouldn't be a lot of reason for the market to do that, on a Friday. There are some things that kind of make sense about trading the futures markets if you just think that there actually are humans making decisions. And it's Friday, they want to get to the Hamptons, they don't want to be at their computers. So if they're done already, they're done, and there's no reason to keep pushing it. So that's why these kind of snapback short squeeze, trades off old ranges, those work really well going into the close, as long as the sweeps don't kill you and you can respect which way the sweeps are going, which, as I said, we were able to do up until here. Now it's kind of back in a little ebb and flow up here. And this is not nearly, again, as good an area as it was when it was down at the lows. Now we're above 00. We're, between here and 10 got sold aggressively, 00 got bought. It's smack dab in the middle of the middle. And it just, that's just the worst place to be. So you don't trade there. The beauty of the high volume reversals, Elena, to your comment about being most comfortable with them, is that it's really obvious when you're right and wrong really quickly. And that's what I like about them too. If you just look at a 15-second view and just look at any burst of momentum, when it ended, you had a perfect spot. You could fade that and take any directional momentum and then find the spot where it stops short and there's a perfect little high volume reversal, at least for some ticks. Never commit that it's going to keep going. Don't worry about getting runners. Just take whatever you get. And these happen over and over again. There's a really sweet one right there. Look at that. And then the bottom of that one took a while to play out, but then it did. This was price discovery around the NFP number. And look this is 15 seconds. Look how sloppy that was as that got priced in. We got the number and we went from 23.75 all the way up to 40, what is that? 45.75. And then in the same 15-second bar, we came all the way back down to here to 10 more points. Mind-boggling. Those are crazy moves. All right, so let's see what's happening now. Yeah, it's still an ebb and flow right here at 5. That's like danger of the middle, totally dangerous middle. It's the middle of the middle. So I'm going to put this on 5 minutes and see if anything at all looks interesting. But I think the day might be over now. I think that might have been our little burst of fun scalping for the close. We're back in the middle. We still have enough time, but again, we had the perfect timing for that to happen. And now, unless that's happening again, at least by the start of the next bar, the 1231, it's likely not to. It just, again, Friday, we still have a little bit of bid under the market, but I just don't see any edge in trying to play that either way right now. So, keeping in mind, everybody, that this is our last live session. And once again, tomorrow morning, we have the debrief and we'll answer whatever questions you have and can repeat anything and go back and look at specific times or whatever. But this is the last time we're actually going to be seeing live trading. So if you have any questions about anything about anything, obviously throw them out. But specifically with respect to live trading, if necessary, we could switch to a sim and start doing a lot more stuff if you guys want to see examples of different things. I don't see any great edge here either way to play. I don't even see good, like 1 or 2 or 3 tick kind of trade setups. If anything, you got to play long, but it's just a horrible spot to do that. Look at these. These have been sold pretty hard up there. So yeah, there's a down sweep. So there's the argument against the long. We just had a down sweep that was 2, 4, 6, 8 ticks. Mind thy sweeps. That didn't used to be nearly as important as it is now that we're trading so thin. When the market gets back to normal liquidity, that becomes less important. You don't have to be so concerned with sweeps all the time. This is unusual. Normally, sweeps are only a concern around news or right at the open or right at the close, but we've been seeing them all day and during the night a little bit too, and that's unusual. So learn to be respectful of them, but over time you should see a little less of them as this market settles. Ooh, could we get another push down here? It's looking like it might be thinking about doing that. Wouldn't that be fun? Okay. So my radar just lit up for a potential down move again. So now all of a sudden I'm interested in seeing what happens down here. Don't ask me why my radar just lit up. It had to do with the way we sold off of, remember I was saying, we've sold off from up here a bunch of times really sharply, and then we did it right after I said that. So I was kind of like, all right, well, if that pushes down again, it certainly could put 00 back in play, and we could certainly play 10 again. So maybe it's going to give us a nice little range here. I'm trying to see if it's going to respect the quarters, and it is, but very loosely. Like, now we just went above 7.5 and popped right up to 9, but ooh, and that's a good one. Now we popped to 10, so there's a little more short squeezing going. Those are big sweeps up. As long as there's no down sweeps, that might be worth playing. Let's see. Yeah, there's a down sweep again. Ooh, that's a big down sweep. All right, this is going to be a sit on hands, I think. It's being fairly clear and telling me that it's pretty dangerous to play either way. So, oh well. Give me a second here. There's a tree right outside my window that is dropping this really sticky green pollen. And I'm not really allergic to stuff like that, but this one, this stuff is like gorilla snot. It sticks to everything. And it's all over my windowsill. And so anyway, wiping it off of my keyboard stand right now. All right. Ooh, we got the push down to 00. Look at that. Okay. Will it hold 00 one more time? Let's watch. There's liquidity again. Remember, it traded through that liquidity the last time really aggressively. Then it held and came back up. So I'm not going to just buy 00. That's stupid because it could puke 00. But what gets interesting again is 95 right there. It's also the POC. That's why it's colored. And I don't really care about the POC, but it's a highest volume node right now. So that's significant. And so a push down might be longable again here. But the sweeps are making me very wary to do it. We're having some wicked down sweeps. We just had one that was 12 ticks. This one right here went 12 ticks. Actually, it went more than that. It went 16 ticks. Yeah, that's it. Really hard to manage your trade when there's 4 points of heat either way. So again, and there's a big sweep up, almost exactly as big, not quite. That was like now it's as big. So now it's a 4-point sweep up. Yeah, this is almost price discovery again, guys. Really unusual at the close. All right, so one more time, I'm going to call an audible with respect to our sessions and what we can accomplish. We will keep this one open until the close, but I'm not going to go. I planned on going a little past the close, like another half an hour, so we could see that going into the settlement, what was happening. I don't think that's going to be of any value today. I think it's going to do a lot of this pretty much from now through the close and the settlement. I think it's going to keep doing what it's doing, but we'll give it another 45 minutes of action here. And I'm really hoping we get a better push down than this one that held at 0, because that I would nibble long. I'm more willing to take risk long from the lows than trying to short up here, simply because, if anything's likely to be really unusual and catch anybody off sides, it would be a big push up going into the close. Any kind of big push down probably wouldn't attract a lot of momentum because nobody's here to join it. But if people start getting trapped short going up, that gets very interesting, as it always does. Short squeezes make price move so fast that they're just golden opportunities to make money. So you want to, always be around and available if the odds are good for a short squeeze. All right, still trading this range here, the 0 to 10 range that we've been in all this time. The LRCs are calling it 0 to 9. That's good enough. Yeah, it didn't quite all the way trade through 0. This liquidity here held this time. See, we traded through that, and then this time, not only did it hold, but some more came up underneath it. See, it's whiter down there. There's like 5-6 levels of white, and a couple of real bright white ones. Those are the bigger ones. That's what I expect to see going into the close. We should see more liquidity come in underneath the market, and any attempt to move down, get bought, and it just should sort of drift up with potentially a good short squeeze setup. That's what I would expect on a day like this. So let's see if we can find a spot to play it with no big sweeps. And there's another lift. And there's 10 again. And the liquidity is at 10. It's not as aggressively stepping up, but it's there. You can see that's the one that got chewed up last time. It's kind of blinking here as we're coming up there. And again, just for clarification, this heat map is running on my cash account that's got full liquidity, 200 levels. And so we're seeing everything. I'm just superimposing this traded volume only dome on it. So we can also compare the feeds and make sure that this Rhythmic paper market is keeping up with the cash real market, and it is. They're in sync now. So Rhythmic seems to have solved their problems, at least for now. I wonder how much of their problem JVC has to do with the fact that there's like 300,000 brand new evaluators all sending them customers, and they're creating these hundreds of new accounts every day.
I don't see how that could not be a factor.
Yeah, it must. Let's see. Elias, I used to think that ranges were not tradable, but after this week, cool, awesome, Elias. It's the most predictable part of the market. You just have to figure out simple, ways of what's the range, and it's not like anything is necessarily right or wrong. It's just a good statistical way to measure the range and the initial balance. So LRCs and the initial balance, those two ranges and the sessions, overall, that gives you a really good picture of what's going on. I'm glad you're seeing that, because that really was my mission for this week, was to be able to communicate that for people that hadn't been able to understand that yet. And then it's just a matter of practice after that. You just get good at it. And, people mention all the time that, I can do this for a while and then I get run over. Get used to it. That is what it takes as you practice. That's how you learn where not to get run over, because how not to get run over is the only thing you really need to learn with this. Right? I mean, the technique as to how to trade, it's pretty simple. It's the only mistake you can make is if you have a big loss by getting run over. And so you just got to learn where that's likely and how to avoid it being a disaster. And, like I said, with my micros, if you're trading up to 30 micros on a quote unquote $25,000 account, you shouldn't let any loser be more than $100. That's all. And that's really hard to do under these conditions with even one mini. But, with 5 or 10 micros, that should be doable if you're choosing the range properly. And then that's just about practice. And guess what? We're back at 0-0 again, and looks like we're going to challenge that liquidity and go through it this time. We are. This is an interesting spot for another long right here, and I'm going to take it, but I'm probably going to want to get another one down there. So I'm going to put an order at 97.75. And let's see if we can catch another pop off of this, and maybe we'll just target up here and see if we can catch the pop. So let's see, that'll be a 5-pointer to right there. So let's see if we might get that trade. I might get run over, and I might have to show you what it looks like to have the range change. But at this point, I'm willing to buy this down into at least to the mid 80s. Because of that potential for the snapback. And it's already been profitable. I want to take 4 or 5 ticks out of it, or 2 or 3 points. I can. In fact, let's do that right now. So we're long at 0.75. So 275 will give us 2 full points. And so if we put that in 2 1/4, that will fill. I'm certain of it, because it's just below the quarter, and there it goes. So we just made just under 2 points on that. And that's the type of thinking you should have in scalping. God, if I can really predictably get out of that with 2 points that fast, it might pop up and go back to 20, but I'm better off not taking the risk that it pushes back down. And then, go ahead, and if we get another push down, then, I'll buy it again. And we were in that trade for 41 seconds, and the MAE was 7. And that trade was $7.50. So that would have been, $75 with 1 mini. And that's really respectable at risk. And, now, and it hasn't pushed above where I sold it by much. So that was a good call. So there's a really good example. I've got this order resting down here at 97.75. It's just above the 97.25. That was kind of where I would buy again. And, you could stick another one down at 95, 95.25. If we get another push down, it's probably not a bad spot to buy, but I wouldn't be real aggressive. This looks like it could go back into the 80s at the close. So, I want to see how hard it comes down before I really commit to scaling into it, if I'm even going to. So let's see if we get a fill on the first one. Obviously, it's really asymmetric now. If we go below, if I fill these two, let's say it sweeps down and fills these two, and then immediately takes 95 out going down, then I know, okay, maybe I'm wrong, and I'm certainly not going to add to it, and I have very little risk. But if it fills those on a sweep down and then reverses back here just to 0-0, I have a 5-point winner on one and a 3-point winner on the other. So that's a worthwhile little game to play, as long as you correctly figure the spots to play it. And I'm doing it here because the bottom of the range is right at that spot that I'm trying to buy it. And then there's some old demand under it, which suggests, not for sure, but it's likely that if we get down there, there'll be some buyers, and I'll get my little baby snapback, at least, if not a big snapback. So that's the kind of little range trades I like to do, particularly when the closing range is this predictable. This is a pretty nice, tight little range. It's still, the top is 05, 06 now, and the bottom is 97. So, it's holding a nice little 10-point range to play. And that's my favorite. God, this type of trading in the middle of the day is my favorite thing to do with, 5, 6 minis. Because you can pick off 3, 4, 5, 6 ticks over and over again, and you never have MAE that's big if you just stay tuned in to the action as it's playing out. So we'll see if we get a fill down there. I'd say the odds, the longer we go, the further we go toward the close, the less likely I am to get filled down here on these two, because it's more likely to just settle into the range than it is to push the edges of the range. But, we'll leave those down there and see what happens. They're not quite that low anyway. The 95 even is not that low. The real edge of the range would be down here at, 90 and into like 85. I doubt it's going to push down that far. It just doesn't seem to have any interest in going that way. Now there was a two-way sweep. Now we're back at 6. So anyway, we'll watch that, see if anything interesting comes up. Jan, question, what are some alarm signs that the range might break in a particular direction? A really good one is a puke setting up. That's the most classic way that a range breaks. If we get down to the bottom of the range and there's a whole bunch of absorption down there, and then we trade away from it a little bit, and then we head back down toward it. And, if you look at how many contracts got absorbed at the edge and you say, wow, if that pukes, it could be 10 points, that takes it way out of the range, then that's how you see it. You have to evaluate over and over. Like right now, it's at the top of the range, and it should hold between like here and 10. What would it take to really puke that? Well, it would take some pretty good volume right here. And, so watch the LTQ and, and it's holding and it's doing what you'd expect. And there we go, right back into the range. So, if we got up here and I didn't see exhaustion, but instead I saw those numbers going up, look, 148, 20, 34, 5, exhaustion. If I saw 148, 300, 500, 700, it's going up, and that's not exhaustion. Okay, so it might be absorption, but it's not exhaustion. So it just looks different, and you learn to read it over time. It's not something you learn in a week, even a year. After I think a few months or a solid year of really, spending time watching and learning, I think you can learn what to look for and feel like you can see what to look for properly. And then it just becomes a matter of practice. That's really the spot. When you get there and you can see the edges and understand, then you just have to practice and you get better at it over time. JVC posted earlier this week in the Scalpathon stream that, he was just taking these techniques, and he's not a scalper by any means, but he was just trying this, and he had a big string of good trades. And it's a simple technique if you don't overthink it. The boundary
part.
Yeah, the boundary of the ledge.
Not overly analyzing it.
Exactly. I mean, when the boundary of the ledge is going to go, it's going to go. And there's no magic equation that's going to tell you that. But look up here. There was just no volume. So there's no reason to believe that would have gone up there. Whereas other edges, when they went, look at when we came through this one down here, the volume went up as we plowed through it. And so that was a really good example that it was going to go. And then we came right back into it. So yeah, it's just practice. And there, see, we took out 10, we took it out aggressively. Okay, this could be the beginning of the short squeeze right here. Let's see, what time is it? Perfect timing. Boy, if we go into the last period rotation and we can continue this push up, I don't think it's going to happen today. I really don't, but I wouldn't short this either here.
There's a lot of zero prints from 23 to 30.
Yes, there are. And lots of stops on this last rotation too. So lots of things could happen here. Yeah, this is a very, very interesting scenario. I'm going to put up the session on my other monitor and see what that looks like. Oh, wow. The session is also very interesting. It has a price rejector at the top. We are between min-max delta on the session with the price rejector on the pullback. And we're right on some big bid side delta here. You can see those big pink bars. That was some high bid side volume, and now we're above that. So here, this is short squeeze story here. Boy, if anybody still hasn't covered, they could end up really in trouble here. Let's watch this. This could get really fun. Again, we saw one of these a couple of weeks ago where it did 40 points. It went into ebb and flow for a little while and then went 40 more. 80 point, and it was, I mean, we're talking about in a matter of minutes. The first 40 points was on two 1 minute bars. That's how fast that happened. And it's held 10 strongly enough that, again, if I was feeling aggressive and I wasn't quite as tired as I am, I might be trading this, but you don't want to just hold it long. You got to get a pullback that is a spring. So we have a price rejector at the low. Let's look for a spring setup here and see if we're going to get it. because that will be the first signal. So where would a spring happen? The first one happened right there. So the next spring would be off of this volume here. So if we clear 17 on a low volume pullback and we come up to it, we should spring right out of there. So that would be the ideal spot to get long if in fact that happens. And again, I'm saying I don't think we're going to see that. I think this was probably the last big move, but that's the spot to watch. So the spot that's in play is like right in here. If it can take that out and get above 17, that would get really interesting, but we're way far away from there now. So I don't think that's going to happen. So you can see when you don't have a trending market, the 1 minute goes back and forth. Like look at my far left panels here. They're just flipping over, long, short, long, short, long, short. And that's what's typical when the market is just in a range. It'll do that. So that's your first clue. When your 1 minute looks like that, you've got a range. So then get over to your faster views and look to game the range. The top of that was real clean, turned nicely. That was another high volume reversal, by the way. I mean, look at that. Perfect. Came up really strong. And, high momentum stops instantly and it turns instantly. So, again, playing some of these, given the circumstances of the sweeps, maybe not, but that was definitely high volume reversal. So just learn to recognize the pattern and maybe trade it under conditions that are a little less risky. So what we'll do here, we just started the final period right now. So let's see how that looks on the rotation, if there's anything interesting there happening. Oh, wow. Look at that. Price rejector on the open of this bar and on the pullback. It doesn't seem to want to break out of this range, though. The top of the range is where I'm moving my mouse here. And we just did some zero prints on the way back down. So, and lo and behold, now we're down at 5 again. Oh, this is too much fun. I'm glad I didn't take anything long up there. See, that's why you get these sweeps. We just dropped from 11 to 6 in one 5-second bar. Conclude what you may from that. And right back to the VWAP again. I think that's evidence that there are large traders at certain price levels that, we're not seeing any footprints of them. When they're coming into the market and they're saying, okay, this is a good spot, I'm going to sell 500. They're just doing it. And, and it's sweeping the market. And I don't think there's any way to see that coming other than just to stay out of the way. We've still got some orders down here. I'm going to cancel those. It's getting a little too late for that idea to work. That the next push down, we shouldn't see that again. From here to the close, the idea of a push back down to the lows to rally again, it's a little late for that. So I'm not expecting that. And if the market's really going to break down at the close, sometimes it'll do that in the last 15 minutes or so. So the trade you saw me do a bunch of times where I was, buying the 00 or buying the push to 97 or whatever, I'm not interested in that trade anymore. Now we're at the point where if that were to happen down there, I would be suspicious. So now I think it might just drift into a spot to settle. And I wouldn't be shocked at all if it settled right around 4,300 somewhere. That means between 95 and 4,310 or 90 and 4,310. Why? Because we're perfectly symmetrical. And look at this. This doesn't get cleaner than this. Look at this volume profile. It's perfect. It's literally a perfect bell-shaped curve. And, on a Friday, that's telling you, the market pretty much agrees on what it should be. And everyone wants to get to the Hamptons or the pub or wherever they're going. So we'll begin to wrap up. I'm not going to end yet, but I don't think there's going to be a lot to do between here and the top of the hour that's going to add any value, but we'll watch for a little while more and see. Meanwhile, if there's any questions or JVC, you got anything you want to add?
Yeah, actually, I've got another, I don't know what you call it, metaphor or something, but along the lines of not getting run over and needing practice to avoid it. Imagine taking a 4-year-old and telling them to go cross a busy street. What's going to happen to them? They are going to get run over. It's grisly to think about that way, but yeah, they're going to get run over because they just haven't had enough time to understand the dynamics of moving vehicles and size of vehicles and speed of vehicles and traffic lights and walkways and all the other things. But, take a 14-year-old and tell them the same thing. Probably not going to have as much problem.
Exactly.
4-year-olds. We're all 4-year-olds.
They learn from experience. A really good way to see that too, because their lifespans are accelerated, is if you have dogs and you've ever trained a dog, it's watching them learn stuff like that. You can, particularly smarter breeds, boxers or border collies or, Aussie doodles, they figure stuff out like that really quickly, and you watch them learn, and you can tell it's just practice, and that's how you train them. And that's how you teach them.
And you can see them doing the math.
Absolutely. Alice so much, and Dozer, the puppy. Alice is the older one, and she's known me for her whole life. She's almost 10 now, and smartest dog I've ever worked with. But Dozer's starting to finally get over his puberty and listen more. And you can just see them. When I tell them something, they're translating words, and they remember sounds, and they remember lessons, and particularly if you train them, with rewards and not with punishment, because good dog training is about incentives, and they want to please you, not that you force them to please you. And
good human training is about incentive, not punishment.
That's true. And you can always tell if it's a good dog, it's because they have a good human. And if the dog is nasty or bad or poorly behaved, it's probably because they have a crappy human.
That's right, Tyler. I remember seeing that in your pictures.
There's no bad dogs. Let's see. That's okay. That's awesome. So, awesome. Congratulations and welcome. I love all animals, but I have a lot of interaction with dogs and cats, and with some others too. But I regularly house sit and take care of other folks' dogs. I'm Uncle Jeff to many, many dogs. I have an Instagram that I keep up with most of them. It's on my profile. Some good friends of mine have a big ranch property in Santa Barbara, and they have two doodles, the Dozer Doodle puppy and the Aussie Doodle Alice, and I frequently house sit and ranch sit for them, and those dogs have been with me through fires and mudslides in Montecito and all kinds of craziness, and they're so smart, and like you said, JVC, watching them figure it out when you're talking to them.
Totally. That's been one of the more frustrating things about this whole COVID thing, is that normally when we'd go for a walk, we'd run into 3-4 people in any given moment of the day out walking their dog, and you get to pet the dog, and the dog is so happy to see you and everything. And now it's like, nope, you don't get to do that anymore.
And everybody was kind of avoiding everybody. And yeah, it's interesting because here, a lot of the dogs here, because, we're rural and it's kind of off the grid, a lot of the dogs just kind of are out and they come and go as they please. And it was funny because everyone's dogs were visiting everybody else, but the people weren't. And I also have that cat, Charlotte, the orange kitty that comes and visits me. Yeah, she comes over all the time. But, oh boy, okay, we got another push down. This could be another opportunity for a long. It's not quite far enough down, though. All right, now it's getting there. It was trading at 3 when I said that. Now it's trading 1.5, 2. I'd love to see 97 again. I would buy 97 again. But like I said, if it's too late in the session, a push down is very dangerous, because I've seen flash crashes right at the close where all of a sudden the bottom goes and everybody sells because we hit a bunch of stops and, just nobody expected it. So I tend to be cautious, but this actually looks like a pretty good setup here. There are buyers here. I just want to see it. I want to see a puke to buy. I want to see a puke down to buy. At 97.75, I would buy anywhere in this bump right down here. As long as it stayed above 95, I would buy this, and I would use micros because this might take more than one. You don't want to try to just get a perfect entry with a one lot. You won't. So let's see what happens here. It's at a very dangerous spot. Liquidity is advertising at 99.75 and 00, and we've traded through that liquidity 4 or 5 times already. There we go. Sweep down right to that liquidity. We touched it. We're probably going to plow right through it because whoever it is isn't going to step in front of this. So again, a push down to 95 is really interesting long, maybe 97. Although the closer we get to the close, the less likely we're going to get a wicked snapback because everybody's already covered. So it could be new shorts. We could see a bottom fallout. I don't think so. This looks like it will hold. I'm just not anxious to get in front of it. It's 20 minutes to regular session close. It's probably buyable here, right around 99, but it's risky. It's certainly to 95. I'd rather, if you're going to take this trade, let it be a really good trade, and that's 95. So let's see if we get that. That's the pretty significant high volume node. And for it to go below that, it would have to get pretty aggressive. again, it's tradable here as a long, off that 99, but it's a really bad, risky idea. We've seen two sweeps here that were, that one's 16 ticks, this is 12 ticks, and those happened in 5 seconds, and just instantly there was just nobody there. And the same thing, we trade right through liquidity and then people step back up. We've seen that pattern over and over again this week. And so, I'm just not convinced there's a lot of support down there of buyers coming in at 99. I think we need to see 95, maybe 96. A little bit of energy at 96. Yeah, see it. 95 is really the sweet spot. That's right there. Let's scoot that up to 95 and a half. We'll just park there and see if it sweeps down to me and fills me, we could end up with a really good long. We saw that a couple times this week where it sweeps down and turns instantly. So that's not a bad spot to sit. I'm not gonna put a lot of volume on it, but if I got filled on the one lot down there, I'd take it. I'd say it's not gonna happen, but I'd take it. I just put another one on at 97 3/4. So I got two on there now. I don't think either of them is going to be anywhere near in play, but if those fell, either one of them or both of them, I think I might have a pretty good chance of making money with them. I'm below where the liquidity was, so it would have to blow that low again. And, so it's a potentially interesting spot for a puke reversal, kind of, predictive high volume reversal, if you will. But again, it's just, I'm basing it on the range. That's all I'm doing. I'm looking at the bottom of the range here and I'm saying that's interesting if we get into this demand again. So same thing I've been doing over and over again. I'm just not real excited about doing it this late in the day. We only have 15 minutes left. We should just go up from here and then settle into the range again. And that's kind of what it's doing. But boy, it's so quick. Yeah, I don't think I want either of those. I'm going to cancel those. And we'll just watch this a little bit more. It's back at the VWAP again, back at 7 again. So, big sweeps down to liquidity, ebbs and flows for a couple of seconds down there, then comes back up to the last ebb and flow, then sweeps up to the liquidity again. It's behaving predictably. It's just not all that tradable. That's, it's doing what you'd expect it to do. The sequence is the problem, which is it going to do first? And you can't predict the next direction well enough right now to really play aggressively because it's going both ways so aggressively. That's why. Sweeps, your nemesis when you're a scalper. All right, so quarter odds, almost quarter of. I have this feeling we could get a little burst of energy into the close. And I also keep thinking, we should just wrap this session up here. And then as soon as I think that, I see a little more energy and I think, let's hold on, maybe it'll get going. So we'll go ahead and go to the top of the hour, but I'm not going to trade unless I really see something I like. So I'm just going to keep kind of stream of consciousness telling you what I'm seeing here. It feels like a just wicked spring up could happen here any moment. That's if I was a gambling person, I would probably be looking for that trade, but I'm not, and I'm too tired to do it anyway. So let's see. Do I keep a trading journal? Good question. I do a journal. I used to journal every day. Years ago. I keep a journal when I'm working on new setups because that's how I keep track of my thinking about how different things work. And but that's the only time I do it now. I journal really extensively and I do evaluations around new setups as kind of R&D. And then once I have it down, I try to make them simple enough that I don't really need to do a lot of recorded notes. But I think journaling is really beneficial. And by the way, Lee is working on some sort of news approach to journaling, which he hasn't told me a lot about, but he seems to think it might be, even more powerful and quicker than the kind of journalistics approach. So be interested to see that. Let's see. Elena, thank you very much. That's a really nice comment. I really do appreciate that. It's been a pleasure to have all of you in our Scalpathon. And again, tomorrow morning, not mandatory, but at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, we're doing the wrap up and the debrief. I'm going to review everything we did all week, and I'll take whatever questions you guys might have, and I will have a document for you with the bullet points for the setups on it. Elias, I've heard of algos being turned off in the last 10 minutes. No, that's actually typical. Algos are turned on and off all the time. This is a really good question. Here is the truth about algorithms in the ES, okay? They're always there on some level. And, let's just define what that means. I use an algorithm. When I put a bracket on, that's an algorithm. When I'm trading the LRC, I'm running a little algorithm that I'm using to make a discretionary decision. Funds have the same thing, and then they also have algorithms that they pre-program to take advantage of certain conditions. And that's something I know Lee's going to release in the next version of the emoji tools, which is like a puking tool. When you see a puke setup, you turn it on and it executes the trade for you, because pukes are hard to trade into. You got to be really fast. It's better to have the computer know what to do. So algorithms are always in the market. Having said that, people that are using algorithms to trade like predictability, because by definition, that's what algorithms are looking for, a predictable set of events. So going into the close, or when it's really volatile, or right at the open, most of the scalping and range algorithms get shut down because those conditions don't apply. So that is a true statement. But a lot of people think that when the algos are trading, you shouldn't trade. The algos are trading all the time, and we're seeing this whole thing that algos are like magic enemies. That they're just not. It's just a tool that large traders use and small traders use, and the large algorithms tend to take advantage of the behavior of retail traders. We see that over and over again, and that's one reason, for example, that a 3-tick target on the E-mini, the ES, is usually a really good spot to scalp at least your first contract, because there's all kinds of algorithms that work with 1 tick and 2 ticks and 3 ticks. And so they're going to be looking to take profits, and you have to understand that puts you at risk. And so, but in general, the wind down of the session and the beginning of the session, they tend to shut those down. Sundays are a good example. We see the Sunday reopening, and usually it's pretty wild, and the range gets established. And then after about a half an hour, there's a Sunday algorithm in the micros I see all the time that trades blocks of like 20s or 25 one way, and then immediately fills the other way. And it works like a 4 to 6 tick range with 100 lots in blocks of 20 and 25. And if you go back and look at any of the recordings of Sundays last year, we see that over and over again. And I don't know if that's one guy or a group of guys, but it's a really predictable algorithmic behavior. And so what I do is I just trade with it. When I see it sweep down those blocks of 20, I immediately fade that sweep down. And it works as a really good little trade almost all the time on Sundays. But I wouldn't do that, during the regular session, because I number one, I wouldn't be able to see it. There's too much volume. And number two, that guy's probably not running that algorithm because it wouldn't work in the regular trading hours, but it works really well on Sunday reopen. So that's a couple of examples. Good question. Could the massive spikes during news be the algos? But no. What's happening is the massive spikes during news are simply price discovery. It's that simple. Nobody is stupid enough to turn things on and off around news. What happens is when the news, if you look at the order book right before any big news event like NFP this morning, what happens is everybody pulls their orders from either side, whether they're offers or their bids, because nobody wants to get caught in price discovery. And so what you see when we see news is price discovery. It's the traders that are trading are finding the value, and that's why it gets volatile. So under those conditions, nobody's going to trade with any sort of algorithm like behavior, because there isn't anything predictable. It's chaos. You're taking advantage of the chaos, not predictability. It's the polar opposite. And so and these are really good questions, because there's a lot of the retail people are always complaining about the algorithms, and they're taking out my stops and all that. And it's like the conversation around icebergs. It sounds real sexy when you're selling trading platforms, but icebergs are meaningless. Somebody's hiding a bid or hiding an ask and replenishing it over and over again. That's fine. You'll see that in the traded volume, whether it's one guy or it's 20 guys collectively making that happen. And either case, it doesn't matter. What matters is that you're seeing it in fact happening or not. And so, for whatever it's worth, there's a lot of BS in the financial world, and particularly, for people selling platforms and indicators, they want to sell magic, and there is no magic. And so it takes a while to really burn that into one's brain and not get seduced by the sexy flashing light stuff that people sell. Oh, wow. Hang on one second. My neighbor's dog just, as I said, a lot of the dogs are out. He just ripped by here, and his buddy is with him wagging. So something's going on. Where's Dad? Oh, okay. She came home. All right. The teacher came home, and now we have 3 loose dogs running around in the street with each other. Okay. As long as Dad's out there, and he is. All right. So that's a good question. And I really recommend just, dialing in on short-term price action and the different stuff that we've talked about. And whoa, look at this as we go into the actual close. It's, there's some wicked sweeps. That's really typical. It's the last 10 minutes. This is totally untradeable. And what's happening now, Elias, is really, as you said, nobody's going to try to game this with any kind of algorithms. What's happening here is it's sort of like price discovery, but what's happening is the people that have to close trades are doing it, and they're kind of trying to optimize the process. So there's arbitrage going on as the equities close, because the futures, need to be in parity more or less with the equities once we settle. And so there's a lot of dynamics right at the close. And oftentimes you see people playing, they used to do what are called program trades, play the close of a big equity like IBM or Google or something against the S&P 500. And so you see a lot of this real wicked big volume right in the last few minutes. And that's why it's big arbitrage trades against big blocks of volume, and speculators trying to play off of that as they're closing their positions for the day. And it's really hard to trade this unless there happens to be a short squeeze or a breakdown like we've already been talking about in trading. So let's see. But I want exactly. You want your iceberg detector to scream, there's an iceberg here. Buy, sell. I know. Everybody wants that at first until they realize that doesn't work. Doesn't matter how much you spend. Doesn't work.
There we go. Sorry, I was muted. If anybody wants to, drop a bunch of money on one, I'll gladly make you one. I'll make you some yells and screams and dances, and no problem.
Yeah, the JV box won 10,000.
Go. Exactly.
Is that guy still around? That wackadoodle E-mini Vinny? Is he still selling his Algo Box 9,000 or whatever?
I'm sure he is. I haven't seen him anywhere pop up his head in a while, but I also got out of most of the garbage.
Yeah, I blocked him on Twitter because I just got tired of seeing his bullshit all the time.
Yeah.
Oh, crap, this is way over. There we go. Now we're at the right part of the range. Yeah, he's pretty funny.
I want to make the litter box 9,000.
Yeah, exactly. The full moon indicator. Wow. Okay, now we're getting our closing short squeeze. We're back at 15. 20, I think, is kind of the balanced area. So I'd be shocked if it gets much above 20. But if it does, I might join it long here for the last few minutes. I don't think it's going to. It keeps running into lots of people that'll happily dump 400 or 500 contracts at 20 or anywhere near it. So I wouldn't be shocked at all. All right. So we're going to wrap up right at the close. There's no reason to do this into the settlement. And for those of you who don't understand how this works, equities close at the top of the hour. So at 1 o'clock, equities close, and that's the official end of regular trading hours. And then the futures go into, normally they go into settlement before the new session starts. And on Friday, they go into settlement and they settle. And there is no new session till Sunday. So, and that goes on for another 45 minutes or so until about 2 o'clock. So, I was thinking if we had a big short squeeze close, that would be fun to watch going into settlement, but it's going to be really boring today. Everyone is clearly out of the way if they're big enough to worry about that. And we're just seeing the normal kind of price discovery at the close as people try to avoid the equity arbitrage. And that's what's going on here. The reason it gets so crazy is because we are a derivative of the equities, and the equities are closing, and they're closing for the week. And there are funds that have hedges on and have arbitrage positions on using futures, and they have to readjust those at the close, and that's what you're seeing. And so I've seen some really sudden dramatic moves right in the last minutes. Like from here, we're at 17 and a half, now we're at 18. I've seen a market go from here to 40 in a second and back on one of those events. I mean, just boom, boom. And just, somebody bought, somebody sold, somebody got stopped out, whatever. And everybody adjusted, or they, sold the equities that are in question, or bought more futures or whatever. And they readjusted their arbitrage. And look at 20 trading here. Look at this. Trading pretty aggressively. This is probably the short covering that I was expecting going on right now. It's a reasonable amount of buying at the high of the range, and that's probably the short covering. Let's look at the 30-minute footprint. Yeah, there's some zero prints. Yeah, they're running stops up here. Oh wow, look at that sweep back and forth from 22 to 18 and a half. Yeah, that's what's happening. So anyway, not tradable, but we have our little short squeeze long going on here, and just kind of watch it as it unfolds. It's got 5 more minutes. And
now that we're up there, by the way, there's still that huge pile of zero prints between about 23 and 30.
Okay. Let's see. Can we see those here?
Should see them on the 30-minute. That's where I see them.
Yeah, hang on. Let me just get it so we can see it. Where do you see those? Between where and where?
Between 23 and 30. It's about a dozen of them or so, 13, something like that.
From when?
When did they start? I don't know. Let me go back in time.
I see a bunch, but it looks like they all.
Oh, yeah, they're from today. They're from about 1 p.m. Central, so 11 a.m. our time-ish.
Okay, I see a couple there that filled in. Anyway, it's an interesting setup. We're at a very interesting spot. I don't think. Again, I just don't see anything I would really want to trade, but some of this has been predictable. Let's scoot that back over. What's going on here? Where are my bars? There they are. Okay. Now the top's relatively, it's sloppy, but it's low volume. So there's a couple of zero prints down at 17 now. One right there. Look at the min-max. They're all the way down here at 10, and we're way above both of them. So it's just, randomness here, really. All right, let's not extend it any further. There's probably not much more to learn. So we'll just watch the close, and we will wrap up right as that happens. So if there's any other questions, please get them up, posted in the next 2 or 3 minutes, and I'll answer them. Otherwise, we'll just kind of watch this play out. I think it's going to settle in here somewhere pretty soon. Doesn't look like it has enough energy to go either way real aggressively. And again, don't forget, tomorrow morning we will do a little recap and answer whatever questions there are. And we actually made a little bit more money today. Today went up even more. So my totals, God, did I get this over 1,000 for the week? I think I might have. Let's see. Go back to the beginning and get all the data again. I did 1,031. Cool. So we made a few more winners there, and we just got over it. So there's the, I ran into the wall of my mouse. Okay. There's the totals for the week. And again, I posted most of this in the pit in the stream for the Scalpathon a minute ago, or a few minutes ago. And if I remember after the close, I'll update it with this. There might be a few trades missing off that one now, if I forget to do that. Thank you, Tyler. Appreciate it. Enjoyed it, everybody. And again, look forward to tomorrow morning. If you have questions or comments, give it some thought tonight. Maybe go over your notes, go over the sessions and the recordings in the library, and that'll be your time to ask me anything you want and discuss things in detail or get things clarified. And yeah, it is highly paid hourly work. That's exactly what it is, Brent. You just have to think of it that way. So, thank you, Jose. I appreciate the kind comments. Elena, Elias, Jan, thank you. Appreciate it. Jeffrey, as usual. And let's go ahead and wrap up. JVC, you got anything you want to add as we go into the top of the hour and we close
nothing else.
here?
This has been a really cool week. You guys have been awesome. This has been a really good group. You've, as Jeff has commented on, I've seen you've asked really good questions, and haven't been a lot of the sticking points and struggles that we've seen in other price action related boot camps and things like that in the past. So you guys are getting it. It's awesome. Yeah,
everybody did their homework and did the tick maker thing, so they understood the basics. And yeah, I think it went really, really well too. And I'll look forward to the morning. And so give it some thought tonight, really, guys. What can I help you with that I can elaborate on or expand upon? Thank you, Waleed. I appreciate the thanks, and we'll see everyone later on. It's closing right now, so let's just watch the close as it. We'll watch the last 45 seconds and then I'll wrap it up. So
if we get one of those last 5-second ridiculous squirts.
Exactly. I'm thinking we might. That's why I'm waiting to see.
Yep.
See if
fun.
It pukes and takes out the high. Wouldn't that be funny?
Yep. That's what I'm looking for right now. Come on. It's trying.
It is trying. It really is. It's like, come on. Let's.
Oh.
I mean, it's trading pretty aggressively in the high 20s now. So. Oh, here we go. Let's reset that. Let's see. Let's get a new.
Here we go.
There's 30. Come on, baby. Oh. This will be in one sweep.
There's a wall there. Once they bust through that, it's going to just go nuts.
Yeah, the liquidity is right there again. Yeah, if it can trade through it, it really will. But I don't know. Yeah, now it's pushing down.
Crushed it.
Yeah.
Nope.
And that is the close right there. So now it's just settlement. So. Interesting. This is, again, for the Sunday reopen, pay attention to that spot. I always talk about this on Sundays at the reopen. The spot we closed at and how it traded is really relevant. It pushed up into that, and there was enough people selling that, we're seeing the selling. But, this is definitely an area that's going to be in play on the reopen if we're anywhere near it. So keep that in mind for Sunday. And we'll go ahead and call it a wrap. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate all the fine comments and all the participation. Thank you, Henny. I appreciate that. Please watch the recordings tonight. Tomorrow is your last live opportunity. So, come prepared and we'll go as long as you guys need to. It starts at 9:00 Pacific. We'll see you then. Thank you, JVC. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Catch you later, guys.